the idea of, as a musician or learning to play an instrument, that kind of thing, and it always comes up, what are you going to do if you have to play music for somebody, or if you have to play music with somebody, if that situation presents itself? It can be pretty overwhelming or intimidating. I've been there myself. I remember the first couple times that I ever played with anybody, and I didn't really know exactly what to do, and I was a little worried, but I'm glad I went for it and did it, and I learned a lot from that experience. And I talked to a lot of my students and other people about the idea of playing for people or performing with other people, and there's a lot of anxiety. I hear what the most things that people are afraid of most by doing that. And I've heard stuff like the fear of being judged. A lot of people say that, being judged by others, or the fear of messing up and making a mistake and that kind of thing, and maybe being judged in the process. And I think we all feel that way. And that's just kind of, it is part of it. And I think one of the challenging things as people, it's hard to present or even speak in front of other people. That's one of the things that creates the most anxiety, I think, for anybody. So I remember one of my favorite comedians, Jerry Seinfeld, used to say something like, the number one fear amongst people is public speaking. And then the number two fear amongst people is death. So what he said was that people would rather be in the casket than giving the actual eulogy at a funeral. So I always thought that was kind of funny. But we all have the fear of performing or speaking in front of other people, and that's just natural. But I do believe that that's a big part of musical growth and the learning experience. And when you do have great connections playing with people or playing for other people, you do have great experiences. It's a life-changing thing. And of course, we do have maybe some experiences that are not so great. And so I just wanted to share maybe one experience that I had when I was studying music over at Arizona State University. I was studying jazz, and jazz was really hard. Even when I started studying before that at the community college, I was really bad at it. I was making mistakes a lot. I was getting lost in the form. I was playing with people who were better than me, and I always just felt like I got to step it up and raise my game. So, that was one thing about playing with other people. It pushed me to get better. So I had to kind of overcome some of those challenges. But I remember one time when I was at ASU, I was playing in in a group, a jazz combo group. It was actually a Hammond B3 organ group. I was playing guitar. We had an organ player, we had a saxophone player, and we had a drummer. And over at ASU, we would work on our tunes, and then we would do a performance. And usually we would do the performance in a recital hall over at ASU, but for this performance, for some reason they decided to do it at the coffee shop on campus, which is a little bit unusual. So anyway, so we're going to do this performance, and we're lugging all the equipment, the Hammond B3 organ, the drums, the amps, all this stuff. We're lugging it across campus and taking it to this coffee shop. And we get to the coffee shop, and if you've ever played in a coffee shop or been in a coffee shop, and a lot of them are really just tile floor and glass windows, and that's pretty bad setup for sound, particularly if you have drums or other kind of louder instruments. The sound's just going to bounce off of everything, and it's going to be really weird to identify what's happening sonically and everything. So I didn't really think about that too much at the time, but so we were setting up, we got all the equipment set up, and some of the songs we're going to play, one of the tunes we're going to play is a tune by Wes Montgomery called West Coast Blues, which I worked a lot on. I spent a lot of time learning Wes Montgomery's solo, so I was like, okay, cool. I practiced the hell out of this tune. I'm going to fucking nail this tune. Might have to cut that out. I'm going to nail this tune when we go to play it. For everybody, I'm going to show everybody how hard I worked on it. They're going to be super impressed with me, and the director of jazz studies is going to be there. And we even had a special guest doing a master clinic and all that stuff. And I'm going to be they're going to be oh, this dude's awesome. And so we get into playing the tune, and I go to start taking my solo, and it starts off all right. And then somewhere in the middle of that solo, stuff started getting really weird. So I was playing, and the band seemed to be in a different place with the changes, and what I was playing just didn't seem to fit, and I couldn't identify what was going on at the time. Could have been because the sound was weird. in the room with all the reflections and everything. Could have been a number of things, and I was just like, what is going on? And I thought the band was messing up. I thought the guys I was playing with were messing up. So I finished the solo, and I just felt like, I just felt super frustrated about it, super deflated, kind of embarrassed. And we finished the tune, we finished the rest of the set. Overall it was okay. It was actually, to be honest with you, it was actually kind of a letdown. I had practiced a lot for that performance, and it just failed to meet my expectations. So what I did for that set, and what I do for a lot of my performances, what I learned from one of my teachers, is to record it. And I had a little handheld recorder, and I recorded our performance so I could listen back later and figure out what was going on and just kind of assess the situation musically and find a way to improve. So I listened back to the set, and I listened to my solo, and as I listened to my solo, my heart literally dropped to my stomach. I just was so deflated because I realized that I was in the totally wrong place in the form. I was playing in the wrong place. I was actually probably like 2 or 3 bars ahead of where the band was at. I was totally off in the changes, and that's why everything sounded so weird. And I was probably the only guy in the room that didn't know that. Everybody in the room probably knew that I was in the wrong place except for me. And I was like, felt super embarrassed about it and was kind of crushed by it. And looking back on it later, thinking about it, I was like, well, number one, I'm glad that I recorded it, so at least I kind of found out where I made my mistake, or what had happened. So that's an important thing. First of all, I did the performance, right? And so I wouldn't be able to learn this about where the mistake happened if I hadn't done the performance, even though it was kind of a failure. And then, look, I'm probably the person that cared the most about it. Nobody else probably cared that much. It's all in your head a lot of times. You're thinking about yourself more than anything else, and nobody's really thinking too much about you. But I realized, okay, here's where I made my mistake. And then what I realized is the reason why I made that mistake is because I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to the people I was playing with enough to hear where they were at and to gel with them and to adapt to the situation in the room, even though the room had all these reflections and the sound bouncing around. I wasn't listening. I was in my own world. I was like, I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to be awesome and just totally play, the solo and try and play like Wes Montgomery. And I wasn't listening to the other people. And that threw me out of whack with the whole situation. And I remember talking to the director of jazz studies about it maybe a couple days, 2-3 days later, because he saw it. And I told him I felt so bad. And he was like, you were in what he referred to as musical hell. And I was like, yes, I was in musical hell. I felt terrible about it. But what he said and what I took from it was, look, it happens. And you kind of learn from the experience. And it's just part of the growth process. And the next time you go to play, I was just more conscious. I'm like, make sure you listen to what's going on. Don't come in with a preconceived notion of what you're going to play. When you're in an improvisational setting, you have to listen to what people are doing and play to that, not be like, boom, I'm just going to come in here and just do my thing and close myself off. So that is what I've been doing, is to really just keep the ears open. And although that was kind of a failure, the next performances that I had, I was able to build on that and improve on that. And I've had many great performances as well, like performances that I felt really good about. So, this is why I encourage you learn more a lot of times when you play with people or for people. It's kind of said that when you do a performance, that's like doing like 30 practice sessions in one event. Like the amount of growth that you make from one performance could be like from here to here, versus you could practice a month and maybe just get like maybe here. But this is why I say playing for people and playing with people, you learn the most. And even though you're going to have failures, I've had many failures actually. It's the people who have had more failures that are the more successful than the people who have even tried. So keep that stuff in mind. And, all I can say is don't be afraid to fail. It's just part of the process. And we're always too critical of ourselves. We're worried about being judged and all that kind of stuff. And we just got to put that aside and say, look, if we do well, if we have great experiences, that's what makes music all worthwhile. and we can kind of overcome the fear of judgment. And I still fear the judgment. I think we all do. I think it's a normal process. Whenever we go to play for other people, there's always that process, but that thought in mind. But if you prepare in that way, where you're going to play with other people, that could definitely help it. So I hope that story and that thought maybe kind of inspired you guys to maybe play for friends and family more, to step out and try and play with other people more and get that experience. And it can be super rewarding, and you're going to learn a ton in the process. You're going to make leaps and bounds in your progress musically. And this is why we kind of do this at the studio or online. We have our online programs where we give students the opportunity to play with one another, which is super cool. It's a super fun and rewarding experience, and it's very supportive, and we just want it to be fun. And we know that you're going to learn a lot in the process, and you're going to be super motivated when you're playing with other people. It gives your whole musical journey purpose as well, which is important for you to feel good about it. So anyway, guys, hope that helped. We're driving out here to Mogollon Rim, coming up on some more mountains, heading up some more higher elevation. So hope to have a good afternoon. Hope you guys have a good Labor Day weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.